Luke, how are you, mate?
How's it going, Tom?
All good, all good. So, welcome to the Diving Deep podcast, another episode.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. No, I'm looking forward to it. And the last couple of episodes have been quite interesting. Make for very interesting listening, shall we say?
Yeah, I've got some pretty interesting guests coming up as time goes on, so it should hopefully carry on that way. For everybody who doesn't know Luke Broadhurst, I'm going to give a bit of a short intro as I do with everybody. So he is a DJ, producer, and promoter with over 20 years worth of industry experience. Mainly cut his teeth on the harder edge dance scene under alias Sonic, playing on stages for Hard Drive in Russia, Gatecrasher when it was based in Birmingham, festivals UK wide, and various venues in Ibiza. His productions have earned him the dance chart smashing #1 hit, I Still Love You. He's had big support from the likes of Andy Whitby, hailing I Still Love You as one of his tracks of the year and regularly playing it in his live sets. He's also a promoter with a brand new brand out there, which we're going to talk about, called Underground. So there we go, mate.
That's good. I think you did well there. You've done it better than I could do myself.
A few tongue twisters in there, but mate, where I want to start with things is I want to go right back to like where this all started for you. Really, what got you into the dance music scene? Where did it originally start from?
Yeah, so at a very young age, I was fortunate enough to have parents that were ravers, and I used to go to gigs every weekend. I'd be left with my nan on the weekend, and then when they came back, they would show me all the CDs that they brought back, the music, and it was definitely from them kind of going out, bringing back the music that kind of got me really interested into it. That's where it all kind of started in terms of the ignition of it. And then it kind of progressed to how am I going to make my own stance in the scene? What am I going to do? I wanted to learn a musical instrument. I wanted to learn the saxophone, but ended up getting a synth keyboard. And once I realized what a synth keyboard could do and lots of sounds, that's kind of where the rest is history, really. It just kind of carried forward from there. DJ tuition at secondary school, the headmaster's kid, he was teaching year sevens how to mix on Technics. And I remember being given my first ever vinyl, which was, I forget the name of it, but it's an old garage track. And I remember just playing that constantly and just be fascinated with vinyl. So that's kind of where it all started for me.
Yeah, no, that's wicked. Similar to me, I basically, exactly the same thing. I went to a friend's house and he started getting into a bit of hip hop DJing, and I'd never seen anybody put their hands on a record before. And I was like, and then the doof, 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 and I was like, that's cool, isn't it? You know, and they weren't DJ decks or anything like that. So similar thing, like a first introduction. So a bit like myself, you sort of first sort of went into more the harder style of dance music. So how did you enter into that scene?
Yeah, so again, the entry to that was definitely through my parents being together, going out and about, and naturally just knowing the people to speak to. You know, like I think my mother in particular, she gravitates towards the people that you should definitely know. So that really helped kind of set me up and get in those kind of pilot gigs at a very young age. But I would definitely say I got into the harder side of music because of the parents' influence. And those were the nights they were going to. And eventually, when I was getting good enough to play out, those were the opportunities that came up. But interestingly, there's always been an undertone of house in my music, although not in the early days. I mean, I used to frap it out at 150, 155 BPM, hard energy, maybe not hard style as such, but definitely the tougher side of hard house. But then naturally I was getting more of a curiosity to house music and buying house music on vinyl, and that was my my other kind of avenue into playing gigs. It was very much priority on hard house gigs, and then occasionally I'd do house gigs, and I got fairly good gigs on the back of it. I think I did think the best one was I think Space did a world tour, and they did one at the Q Club. Managed to get a set there, and again, it was through Hard House that it kind of leveraged me into that as well.
Yeah. It's I know we spoke about this before, obviously, when we've met up, that people that weren't around at that specific time in like the late 90s and 2000s probably don't realize how big sort of like Hard House became. It really gained a lot of momentum, didn't it? And that's when I first got into buying vinyl. I mostly brought trance and Hard House for the first few years, because it had become quite a big thing, and then it, like everything, it became a bit commercial, and it lost its way a little bit with some of the stuff that ended up on the radio. But it went through, obviously, a number of years being really underground, and then started to become a lot more popular to more people, didn't it?
It did. Yeah, it's Hard House, the scene is always an interesting one. It's definitely a very much like a cult. It's you generally introduced to it from one particular person. You don't generally stumble upon it yourself, although I'm sure that has happened. But yeah, I do remember the days going into Camden, going into Massive Records in Oxford, collecting vinyl, promos, and all of it was in the Hard House area. The more white labeled, the better, because I knew that would probably be one of the better tracks. But yeah, I was very fortunate to get the tail end of the vinyl era as we were going into more the CD era. So, and I remember, playing straight vinyl sets, and then eventually doing vinyl to CD, although that's never a fun one, but I remember doing that. And then eventually it was just pure CD. But yeah, as I say, Hard House is always an interesting one. It's always going to be there. It's like a constant nostalgia for a lot of people. And even I dip my toe back in every now and again, and to see what it's all about. And it's always nice that you've got that to go back to.
Yeah, I see that Alan Fitzpatrick's just done he's just brought out either a new, I don't know if he did the remix, but he's just brought out a new remix of BK's Revolution, which is obviously a big Hard House tune from back in the day. So yeah, it's still finding its way through. I want to go back even further now, so further than your entrance into dance music. Where did your sort of like earliest influences in music come from? So I'm talking way back when.
Yeah, so, well, I remember going to car boots and always being fascinated with CDs. On the back of them, it had like remix or edit. I was really interested in that for some reason. So anything that had that, I would always be curious to know what it is, and I'd buy, CDs for a 50p, a pound, whatever. But it was, I would say, because Hard House wasn't really available at CD to me, or I wasn't aware of it at the time, it was a combination really of like speed garage tracks, which is quite interesting, because that is a theme that I have in a lot of my tracks even now. I'm heavily influenced by that sound, and it kind of it was in, then it went out very quickly, and now it's come back around again, future garage, speed garage sounds, and everyone's playing it like it's the latest craze. It's it's just come out, which is quite interesting. But I've never really been so specific with a particular genre, though, even though I was influenced by those types of sounds. 90s house sound, of course. I would also say classical music as well. Okay. There's not really much that I don't like. I even like jazz music. I'm very influenced by lots of different genres, but I would say the one that kind of I always come back to is that two-step kind of percussion sound that's kind of embedded into that 4/4 beat house sound that we all know and love now.
It's quite funny actually, because most people that I have had on so far, everybody talks about that garage influence, because everybody who is roughly our age will have come through that period, if they were a dance music lover, of watching obviously US garage and then UK garage, and obviously it lost its way a little bit. And you're right, it's come back in a bit more of an underground fashion. But that whole period of like, I don't know, maybe like, I don't know, 8 to 10 years of it really getting big, you know, even UK garage was amazing. You know, it was such a good sound. And then obviously a little bit like we were saying before with Hard House, it got really quite commercial and then it lost its way a little bit. But yeah, it swung back round. From a DJ and producer's perspective, what would you class as sort of like your vibe, your style? What's, you know, how would you describe what you do?
Yeah, so in terms of the styles, and in terms of what I produce and what I look for, I'm not one to be around when browsing through music, because it takes me literally a couple of seconds, if that, to know whether I like the track or not.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a very particular set of sounds, and a combination of how they sound together. And I'm not interested in listening to a breakdown unless the drop's good. But in terms of, you know, the style and things, it's definitely that kind of bouncy, kind of chuggy percussion, something that's different, that kind of gets me to just play that track non-stop. I have to keep listening to it until I'm bored of it. And to be honest, there isn't any one thing that I could say that gives me that feeling. It's a combination of all these different sounds that are put together. I mean, you know, way back when, there was a lot of harder genre songs that I used to like, or bootlegs or remixes of well-known tracks. And then more recently, one track I always keep coming back to is a track by Proc and Fitch, Lullaby. Heard that for the first time not too long ago. And the simplicity and the way that the track is put together and how haunting it is, it's just a track that, you know, I could have Shazammed any other track that night, but that was one of the ones that we were, you know, me and my other half, we were like, we need to know what this track is. And then once we found it, we were overjoyed, and it was like, wow, I've just found gold. So it's difficult to say what sounds that I'm really into. I just know it when I hear it, I guess, which isn't very helpful.
No, I'll get it. I think I'm a music lover like you. I like lots of different types of music. Old, not obviously, I don't really like so much new chart music, but I like a lot of older stuff and different genres. But from a DJing perspective, I totally agree. When I go through my promos or what have you, you know, I skip through things, and the reality is that if it doesn't catch my attention, then that's it. I'll just move on, you know. And then when I'm skipping through, if I think, oh, I quite like that, you know, you get to know what you like, and it's not anything logical. It's just it is, like they say, house is a feeling, isn't it? It's a tagline. It is.
I almost feel it's simplistic. It's the more simple the track is, but it's not simple. It's taken a lot of thought to get it to that point. But I do find the tracks that I really like have got such a simple bass line, they've got such simple percussion, and you think, oh, this is going to be easy to recreate, you know, and then you go and do it and you're like, you just, it's already been done, mate.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with my style of music in which I make, it's fairly straightforward, because as long as it's got like a good hook, i.e. like the instrument, well, it could be the instrument, could be a vocal, it could be a combo of both, and it's arranged right, then it sort of works. But you're right, when you start stripping that back and it's more simplistic, all the elements need to be coerced together so much. I think, like, to me, making more stripped back house music is harder than making house music with all the bells and whistles, because effectively, if you've got a good piano melody, or you've got a good, you know, lead instrument and a good vocal, you're in the game, you know, you're already winning.
Totally. And then you've got like I always find it funny, because I don't really agree that it's a genre, it's just a type of music. And you've got the more EDM styles, big room styles. And don't get me wrong, like some of the engineers behind those and what they do and how creative they are, absolutely amazing. But is it my cup of tea? No, it's not. I always find myself going back to that kind of stripped back, like you mentioned, that raw sound, where, you know, the music just speaks for itself without having to put, like you just said, bells and whistles on it. And I always come back to that type of music, and it's always that gets me up dancing. So
Yeah, no, I get it. It's I've definitely found
Otherwise, it's just
myself.
a fist pump in the air, isn't it?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
yeah. I mean,
and,
I think the further you go into this and the more you get into house music properly, I don't want to speak out of term here, and I don't. If anybody comes across this and listens to it, I don't want them to hate me. But like, basically, listen to the radio and listen to most of the commercial house music that's on there, and you'll probably find that it has a piano in it, or some sort of organ and a poppy style vocal and a drop.
yeah.
Basically, that's the format to get. Well, I'm talking like to get on like mainstream radio and get played all the time. I get that, like if you look at like Radio One, if you can definitely get on like Danny Howard's show with more underground stuff. But
Yeah,
I'm
you're
talking
talking
like,
about the more the
yeah,
mainstream times to listen to
yes,
music and stuff.
yeah,
And no, that is quite true. I mean, it's but then they do obviously cater for more underground music and other
they do.
times, but it's definitely at a particular time, not when people are listening to it, going to work or coming back or whatever.
And yeah, and 100%. And when I receive these sorts of promos through, they've become a bit of a turn off, mate, if I'm being honest with you. You know, like that standard format of what I'm describing that gets tracks played on the radio, that there's nothing wrong with this. It's just my opinion. I don't tend to respond to them that well because it's such a barrage of the same style of music over and over and over. So I now look for more of the deeper cuts, and stuff that's a bit more soulful, definitely not anywhere near as commercial, I've got to say. But yeah, it's interesting to see like that stripped back sound. Certainly it's found its way into different genres. I mean, like minimal tech has become quite a big thing, hasn't it? Which is very stripped back, but it's exploded, and a lot of the younger people are into it. Which I've got to say, if you'd have said to me maybe 5 years ago about that particular sound, will it actually become popular? I would have said no, because there's not a lot to it. Do you know what I mean?
But I think it's a weird one because when I first heard it, I didn't like it. Didn't like minimal house at all. I thought it just didn't really go anywhere. But now the types of deep tech house, but more on the underground side of things. Yeah, I much prefer it, and I don't know whether that's just because I now have an appetite for it, and whether it's more mature. I don't know what it is. Whereas before, if I go back to my roots, I was listening to hardcore.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was going to say drum and bass there, but I'm not trying to put that in the same circle. But I listen to drum and bass now, right? But hardcore I don't listen to now, and I guess it's music that takes you on a deeper level of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're younger and not as or you don't have a mature palette for different types of music, I guess it's too boring. You don't want to get into it. It's a bit like a Netflix series that you have to watch a few episodes to really get into. No 100%. Attention span.
you bang on, and you've hit the nail on the head. It is the fact that your palette changes. Like, I haven't got my Technics set up at the minute, just out of I just haven't got enough room for them. But when I had them set up a couple of months ago, I was digging back through some of my old hard house stuff, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Basically, like, oh my god, it's a doof, 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 big and at some point I actually picked that record up from a record shop and thought, this is brilliant, like, and I look back at it, I'm not saying it isn't brilliant, it's just I look back at it now and I'm like, whoa, like I would never think about listening to anything like this, like, really, or playing it or making it. It's just your palette changes, and I think for most people it gets deeper. You get into the more deeper stuff, I would say.
You do, and that's where if you think about it, that's where people start saying, "Oh, I preferred their old album," their new stuff. I don't like their new stuff. I like their old stuff. No, it's that's always going to be a thing, and I think it's because you have kind of closed the door on that chapter in your life, and you're starting a different one. You've kind of reborn, and you get a completely different perspective when listening to different music. And I do think that a lot of this is influenced heavily by nightlife. Like, if you're not going out and experiencing new music, you're never going to be influenced as if you were just listening on YouTube or SoundCloud or Spotify. It's not the same. I've always said this, you know, with tracks and stuff like that, you know, hold your stuff back, send it to those key DJs that are playing out regularly, and you want to see what the reception is like in the club, because I'm sure a lot of these tracks, if they had been listened to the first time, you know, I don't know, say you're at work or you're putting it on, you're not really listening to it, you're not in that vibe. And I think that's something that is really important. Anything that you think is going to be a banger, that would be definitely a top tip advice, is to keep it back, no matter how enthusiastic you are about getting it out there. And if you think it's really good and you keep pushing it to the right people and they're playing it out at festivals and nightclubs and stuff, that's where you're going to get people going, what is this tune? I want it. I want to get it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I've personally had quite a few experiences of tracks that prior to hearing them at an event, I've never really thought too much of them. And then I've actually heard it in a club or something like that and been like, whoa, like, you know, it gives it a different
and you
edge.
Remember that, don't you? You remember it. I think
it's
the feeling that it creates in the club, and then you remember that feeling because that's what you're playing, because you're taking yourself back to that festival that you first heard it and went crazy about, as opposed to taking yourself back to when you first heard it on SoundCloud. That's not where the hype comes from.
No.
I think a lot of people get that wrong in the music scene. It's very rare that you listen to a dance track in particular, unless it's really, really, really good or really stands out, or got a fairly commercial sound or a commercial vocal, where you kind of go and, you know, this is the best thing. You want to hear it when it's actually out.
No, I agree. So you've done a fair amount of promoting as well over the years. How did that come about? If you know, sort of like, what was the origin story of how you got into the promotion side of things?
Yeah, well, like lots of DJs that are starting out, lack of gigs.
Book yourself, as they say.
That's it. Yeah. In the early days, I wasn't getting that many gigs. I wanted to play out more, and there was an opportunity to start a night, and I actually started a night. And I'm sure, you know, the parents are going to be coming up and down in this story quite a bit. But with my dad, we started a night called Avit, which was a hard house, hard trance night. And we tried kicking it off in Whitney in Oxfordshire at the old club called the Palace, which is where the Wetherspoons is now, if anyone's listening knows the area. It was a complete flop. We lost a lot of money on it. And then eventually we found a wicked little venue in Banbury called the Liquid Lounge, which is unfortunately is no longer there either. But we kept that going, I think it was for about 2 years or so, I can't remember. And it was a nice little night, and it really helped me. I mean, in terms of networking, booking DJs, people understanding who I was, and then eventually getting more and more gigs off the back of it. So that's kind of like where it all started with that. And then eventually I was getting to a certain point with my music and my DJ career, and I ended up being a co-promoter for a night called Evolve, which I wouldn't say is no longer running. It's just we haven't done any nights on there, but that's when we were talking more of the bigger stuff. So doing a 2,000-man dance tent at Stratford upon Avon for the Bulldog Bash. Various different venues in Digbeth, capacity sizes from say 200 up to 600 to 800. And what was great about that is that, again, really helped in terms of getting me out there, but also learning how to really put on a successful night. And most of it, what we learned from it was the production wasn't just all about the DJs, it was about the music and the vibe and the atmosphere that we were creating. They were coming there for an experience rather than what Jock and I and Paul, there were the other guys that ran Evolve, called Banner Brands, where literally all they do is turn up with a banner and that is the night. We were trying to do something that was a little bit more, where it's an experience that they came to, and we did a mixture of legal raves are legal raves, but we won't go into that too much.
No, do. That's what listeners want to hear.
Well, we are diving deep. Well, it's funny, it's diving deep. One of the nights that we used to put on, it again, sadly no longer around, and I may go into the reasons why. The venue was in Kidderminster, not famous for too much, but I'm sure anyone that comes from Kidderminster will know what it's like there. But there was a venue, and we always called it the CAF, and it was kind of like on a need to know basis. And yeah, we used to get, say, 200 people down there, and then we had a wine cellar, which is where the room was, and it was completely soundproofed, and it was like going into a different world. And we always used to call it the Midlands best kept secret. And we used to get DJs from all over, in the hard house, techno spectrum, and we've had Marky G play there to an intimate crowd. We had I think Amadeus, one half of the Tidy Boys, playing down there. And various other people, and it was such a great little night. It was like a little under the arches on the cobbled floor, smoke and everyone there, and it was a very intimate do. To explain it in a different way, if you've ever watched 8 Mile when they're rapping at the shelter, it's that kind of intimate, kind of raw, rustic vibe, and that went on for quite a while until unfortunately the place was no more. But not once did we ever get stopped, because we just had a very good setup there. It wasn't like doing it in an open space in the quarry or anything like that. But yeah, definitely miss those days for sure. It was always good because we did a monthly. But then after that, things were naturally just fizzling out for me, which was interesting, kind of growing up a bit, buying a house, and I'd never hung up my headphones or anything, never had any tensions, but just through doing that, naturally things just started fizzling out to the point where I wasn't really doing anything in the music scene at all, which was, looking back on it now, is quite sad actually. Hence why I'm kind of back with a vengeance, doing lots of things now.
Yeah, I think, and I experienced a similar thing. I know we spoke about this when I caught up with you the other day, where probably most people have had a bit of a sabbatical from this sort of industry or scene or whatever it is that you did in it, because it's quite intense all the time, and it's like you're on to the next thing, and especially if you're let's say under the influence of whatever that may be, obviously, that is a compounding effect to everything, which totally. I've never been really a drug taker, so it was all about alcohol for me. But yeah, in my really early 20s, when I was DJing, when I first got into it, from being a teen to my 20s, I did get to the stage where I was like, fucking hell, like this has got to stop, because apart from working in the week, the weekends were just basically a complete party, and I was just getting so drunk all the time. When it spun back around to Monday, as soon as the responsibilities in my actual day job started increasing, I was like, I don't really know if I can sustain this because I'm never going to actually have a job. So yeah, it's like I took a bit of time out myself.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're saying. I mean, the main reason why it was sustainable for me is, I literally Red Bull and Pro Plus for most of it. I literally got fortunate enough to be introduced to it in a certain way at a young age where, I wasn't really too into alcohol, to be honest, or anything else. I was just there for the music. I think I got more drunk when I was about 12, 13, but that's a different story. But yeah, I would say now it's it's coming back round in a different way. I'm like, it's not the same as what it once was before. I think actually everything falls into place for a reason, and coming back into it now, with a much more experienced head and know how things work, is such a value thing for me now. I mean, I'm just thinking, if I was coming in completely fresh I wouldn't have a clue. Really wouldn't have a clue how things work. So having that experience, and as I said, I've been really kind of into this scene from the age of 10 really, and then really seriously from the age of 15, and actually playing out regularly every weekend. But that hunger never really left. I think I mentioned to you before, I've mentioned to a few others, there was always something missing. And I think my break period time was about 4-5 years or so. Went traveling for a year, that kind of filled the void for a bit. But then I always kind of was like, there's something missing. I feel like I'm not fulfilling my full potential there. You know, what am I doing this for? And it's always for the love of music. And it was only really, and I'm sure a lot of artists will relate to this, whether, you know, they're active or whether they were active and not so much now or whatever. But during lockdown, we ended up buying a projector and just playing festivals on YouTube and boiler room sets and stuff like that. And all of a sudden things started flooding back, memories, and I think I ended up bawling my eyes out. I was just crying because I could not believe that I just kind of wasn't doing anything in the music scene anymore. And like a lot of people, you know, you're not really in it for the money a lot of the time. I mean, especially when you're starting out anyway. You know, the underlying reason that you do it is because you really fucking love it. You really fucking love it. And the money comes second. Yeah, of course. I mean, if it's your main job, of course, that, like, I know you're full-time music, right? So, but that naturally comes if you're passionate about something and the potential to earn money and you're clever and strategic about it. It comes naturally. But if you go into it thinking I want to be rich, then you'll soon be kicked out of it again.
Good luck. Good luck with that. Yeah. No, I completely agree. So, like, in an ideal world, what is your dream of where you would love to take, you know, your ideas of what you're doing and your stuff you learned from the past? Where would you want to take it?
So really, I'm just enjoying feeling like I'm new into the scene and I'm discovering everything again. I'm kind of pretending like, and I think you have to, especially when it comes to, you know, egos of being there and done it before, you know, and you start kind of saying, well, I've been in the scene for this amount of time. That doesn't mean anything. You know, you can go into the scene for a year and you can create the most amazing tune and be skyrocketed. This is how it happens. So I think for me, where I see it now is feeling like I'm starting again, learning things, and you know, I'm not treating myself as this DJ where I was years ago, although it's always nice to have that experience. I'm really looking at my artist brand, whether that I have a few different guys. There's obviously the one that I'm pushing at the minute is under my last name, which is Broadhurst. At the minute, the sounds that I'm feeling with that are all things kind of deep tech house, with my own kind of edge to it. Everyone's got their own edge to it, but definitely influences from chunky speed garage sounds and doing that. But I also have love for like you, I love soul music and I love soulful house music as well. I love pianos and things, and I don't want to, you know, completely separate myself from that, thinking that I just got to do this deep tech stuff. So maybe, and like we were discussing before, maybe there's going to be a couple of brand names there. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe put some answers in the comments what you think would be a good piano house, soulful house, low stepper style DJ name.
You took the word out. I said, well.
I know. I mean, I absolutely love the low stepper sound for that kind of stuff. But what I'm doing with Broadhurst isn't really quite the same. And it's really, you want people to come back because they're interested in your music rather than you just doing everything. And that was a mistake I made beforehand. So definitely learning from that. So that artist side of wise, really focusing on creating really good content, i.e. music. That's something that I'm really pushing. I want to give a little plug to Steve Rigsy of Anarchy Audio Works as well. We've kind of recently touched base again. We've known each other for quite some time, and we're going to be doing some studio work together. So looking to get in the studio with various different people, do stuff on my own, and then production to one side, looking at doing my underground night events, which I think Underground as a banner brand and what it can do, you know, it's endless really. Starting it on the 4th of December in Leamington at Tig's Old Bits. What a name for a venue, eh? But yeah, looking forward to doing that. Fingers crossed we don't get any winter lockdowns. That's the bit that I'm kind of not looking forward to. So hopefully it all goes to plan. But yeah, if anyone's listening that's in the local area, we're doing it all for charity, for Helping Hands charity. But it should be a really good night. And we've got your good self playing as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, mate. And yeah, you took the words out of my mouth because I wanted to speak about Underground. So yeah, it's brand new sort of brand in the town, but I think it will probably go further than that. Totally. You know, you're from a marketing background, obviously. So yeah, no, it's really good to see. Leamington is a lovely town, but you know, like we've discussed, it lacks sort of underground nightlife these days. It once did have it, but it's fizzled out. So it's great to have somebody sort of new on the scene to inject some new life into it, like you know, as yourself. And so yeah, I think the future's bright for Underground, mate, and I'm sure it will go further than just Leamington.
No, that's the idea. I think starting it off small, and I think the venue choice that we've got out the back. So bring your warm jackets because it will be cold. At Tig's Old Bits, I think will be a really good place for us to get some regular traction going. And this is the thing. Anyone, again, top tips from me in terms of putting on events is really think small, but think big with what you're trying to do. So what I mean by that is don't be going to a 2,000 capacity venue and ended up spending several £1,000s on something that you don't know you're going to fill. Always start with something that you've got a really good arrangement where, you know, it's unlikely that you're going to lose money. At worst case, you're going to break even, because that's, you know, that's what you want to do. But in terms of where we're looking to take Underground, I think definitely a record label. That's something that I'm looking at doing. I've already got a date for my latest track called Answer Phone, which is very like, I think this is kind of a little nod to my old days in Hard House, because someone did say to me it should be on a Hard House record label, and I was like, damn, haven't done it. I've kind of taken my old influences, but it doesn't know where it wants to go. So I've decided to kind of be the first track that I will self-release under the Underground Recordings banner. But yeah, there's a lot of potential with Underground and where it can go, and I'm looking forward to seeing, you know, where it goes especially for next year. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing where it goes next year.
No, me too, I've got to say. So 3 pieces of advice that you could offer people getting, I know you've offered a few bits of advice, but we're going to have to find 3 more now. Getting into the industry from your experience, that could be from DJing, production, promoting, whatever you feel.
Yeah, so 3 biggest pieces of advice. The first one I would ask, first one I would say is to ask yourself the question, is this just something that you're doing on the side to impress your mates, or is this something that you really want to take seriously? And I mean really dive deep into that on yourself, because a lot of people will kind of just pass it off as like, no, you know, see what happens. You can't be that kind of, can't be on the fence. It's either you're doing it as a hobby, you don't care where it goes, you just do it for the love of playing music to your mates, or you want to take it seriously. That would be definitely my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice is get thick skin, hun. You need to learn to kind of take rejection like a boss. And rejection comes in the form of no's, fuck yous, no word from them for months. You really need thick skin. And then my last point would definitely be have a sales mindset. Not many people have it. People expect things to be handed to them. And like when I speak to people that, you know, are getting, it's not just in music, just in general, they're trying to get new clients, because obviously I do marketing, right? Or they're trying to get gigs, or they're trying to get dates. It doesn't matter. You've got to have a certain mindset, right? You have to produce and create quality content so that they're going to come to you in the first place. But you've got to be consistent, and you've got to follow up. You've got to follow up, because why should they listen to you? And if you want to stand out from people, it's where you actually show amazing content, but being consistent with your follow-up and not being annoying. And that's a fine art. It's a very fine art. But if you're not following up at least 20 to 30 times with promoters, then good luck. It's the same with tracks as well. A lot of people say it takes 100 tracks for you to really start getting noticed and actually start producing some really good stuff, because that's where you find your sound. It's the same with anything in life, really, and it's being persistent. It's having that drive and hunger that a lot of people don't have. Short-sighted mentality, unfortunately, and not having that long-term mentality set in their heads of what they're trying to do. It's kind of like, can I get a gig this weekend? Well, why are you thinking it like that? How are you going to get gigs that are consistent, that are going to keep you growing as an artist and get you paid as an artist as well?
Yeah, mate, really, really good sort of like tips and advice. I mean, if I go back to like the first one, couldn't agree more. You really do need to like have in your head where you want to take this, because the roads are different. I mean, obviously at the start, it generally is about, just enjoying it and stuff like that. But there's going to come a time, not too far into it, where you're going to come to a crossroads where it's like, right, I've really got to have to like push into this. And it isn't just all about the laugh and the getting pissed and everything like that. And you see a lot of no offense to younger people, it happens to older people as well, but generally speaking, it happens when you're younger, because that's when you're sort of like getting into it. They just get lost in the scene. They just get lost in it, and they just become just complete party heads, effectively. And yeah, it's very hard to create a career out of something when that's how you're approaching it.
Yeah, it's difficult. Taming the ego as well. When you're young, you're male, you're regularly playing out, you're getting birds because you're doing it, because that's naturally attracts. You think you're the Don, but then eventually you get older and you haven't been consistent, or the weekends are working too hard on you. And it's the same where anyone's a flash in the pan, where it's in like sports or fighting or whatever. It's not going to come round. It's not going to be consistent for the rest of your life. So you really need to think about, is this just something you're doing that's a little bit of fun, or is this a long-term career path for you? And if it's the latter, you need to really have that marketing head on you, that sales head on you, in terms of how to market yourself properly. And yeah, as I said, it's not taking knocks on your ego. That's a difficult one when you're younger, because it's like red rag to a bull. It's like, oh, I've already done this, and you don't take advice when you feel like you're doing well. But you're a big fish in a small pond, mate. So as opposed to in the larger oceans.
Definitely. And your point about sort of like sort of promoting yourself and taking it seriously and how to market yourself is true, because I don't have a manager, and as a artist trying to break through or whatever you're trying to do, there is nobody coming along to do anything for you. So either you've got to be like completely on it every day, thinking, right, how am I promoting myself, making music, different strings to your bow, getting out there. If you're not doing that effectively, you're wasting your time. You've got to come from that. You've got to.
It's almost like a rite of passage as well. Yeah, totally. It's like a rite of passage as well, because a lot of people that say, if you're pushing yourself out there and you get in touch with them, you don't hear anything back, it's not because they don't want to respond to you. It's because they're testing to see how serious you are about it. Rather than just sending something. Anyone can send one message or send a private SoundCloud link or whatever. But what a lot of people at the time are testing out, whether you're just trying to get lucky, or whether you are taking it seriously, and they want to know if they can work with you long term.
Definitely. And yeah, the bit about rejection, never a truer word said in the music industry, because you're going to get rejected. And this even happens when you become, I speak to artists that are really far down the line. I'm talking established artists that when they send their music into big labels, they don't get every track signed, even if you're a big player. It's I watched a Roger Sanchez. He does a podcast called, like a YouTube podcast called The Hustle, and he was laughing about the fact that he sends stuff to Defected, and Simon Dunmore, who owns Defected, just says, "Oh, it's all right, but I don't think it's quite right for Defected." I mean, you think like Roger Sanchez, he's had a number one UK, he's had like a number one Billboard chart topping hit, and even still, he doesn't get all of his tracks signed.
No.
So,
no, it's art, isn't it? Yeah, it's art, and I think it's very subjective. Another piece of advice. I know you only asked for free, but just because it doesn't get accepted, or music doesn't get accepted by a label, doesn't mean it's not good. And I think you and I have already discussed this. It's just the taste of the A&R or label manager or DJ that runs the label, whatever. It's his taste, effectively. And I think this is the new challenge that we have in the scene, where you've got the one person that is the DJ, promoter, label owner. They do everything, so therefore they're very passionate and very much keeping their cards close to their chest. Whereas 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, or even longer, you had someone that just did promotion of events. You had someone that just did flyering of events. You had someone that just did record label management. They weren't a DJ or artist themselves. Now it's yes, you still did have that crossover, but now the crossover is like 10 in 1. Everyone's got to have 10 hats on. You can outsource things, but generally the person that owns it is the one that does everything, and then they outsource to other people, but then they don't own it. It's just being outsourced to them. So that's another challenge that you have to do. And it's almost like oh, my music isn't being accepted by anyone, and I'm guilty for this because I'm doing it, is to release it on your own label, because it's easy enough. Everyone can self-release now, which is interesting. Not sexually, but on a label.
Of course, and that is really, I mean, we're coming towards the end, but that is really a good reason for looking at setting up your own label, because you're absolutely bang on, mate. Just because your target label or your favorite labels don't sign your music doesn't mean it isn't good, and doesn't mean that other people won't like it. And if you can get really good at learning how to promote yourself, you can make your own waves, and believe in what you're doing. It just takes a bit of work, it's just you've got to go about it with tenacity. So right, mate, we've got to wrap up because we're coming towards the end of the hour, but where can people find you?
So people can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. I think that's pretty, and Twitter, although I'm not too much on Twitter. And my Twitter handle throughout them is @Broadhurst UK. So that's my Twitter handle. Twitter, Facebook, you'll just see me as Broadhurst UK. But and I'm also doing mixes on YouTube and various different things. So available on most social media channels.
Yeah, cool. Mate, it's been brilliant speaking to you. And I'm really excited interesting. I'm really excited to see where you go with things, because I think the future's bright for what you're trying to do. And if like Luke said, if you're in the Leamington area on the 4th of December, then make sure that you get onto his socials and have a look at the event that he's running, that I'm playing at as well, called Underground, and come and join us. It's charity. It's for a charity, so it's all for a good cause, and we're gonna have a good time.
Perfect. No, thanks for plugging it again. No, it's been really good to talk to you, Tom. And
pleasure, mate.
Yeah, I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Right. Hang on the line, because we'll speak to you afterwards. I'm just going to stop it. All right.
Yeah, no worries, mate.